Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. Well, the guest that we're going to have, you can watch every Friday evening on UNC-TV's main channel at 8:30 p.m., then 9 o'clock on the digital channel on the program Front Row. And if you're missing those programs, well, you have the weekend opportunities as well, but you shouldn't miss them. This is great conversation, quick. One of the things I enjoy about it is it's never boring. Joining us this afternoon, Marc Rotterman. Marc, my apologies for being so kind to you this afternoon. I won't let that happen again in the future.
The following was a paid political announcement.
Thank you very much. No, it's really, it moves. I compliment you. Okay, speaking of moving, what about the opportunity of the House now demanding and voting to subpoena the Mueller documents in light of the fact that the Attorney General had already announced that he was preparing to send them over to to Congress? Why are we going to subpoena something that we know they're going to get?
What the Democrats have done is pivot that, now the people who were working on the Mueller Report, the Democrats, don't think enough is coming out. There's more. But Barr, the political appointee of the president, by the way, a man who has a stellar reputation as an attorney general under Bush 41, is didacting everything so people can see it. But let me just say this. Grand jury testimony and national security is never given to when you do a special prosecutor like that. It's never given. And because there's a lot of people that the grand jury talks to that, frankly, weren't indicted. So why bring their name up and ruin their good name?
Okay, is this aimed specifically at the president, or is it designed also, in your opinion, as you just mentioned a moment ago, you actually alluded to it, to bring down anyone who is distantly or even closely related to the president?
Well, I think that's right. Look, what you have now is they want his tax returns. They want to see all his business dealings. I mean, that's unprecedented. That'll be in court. It will go to court. They'll never get what they want. They're trying to still maintain an issue because, frankly, they don't have much to say. I mean, Joe Biden's collapsing.
Right.
I doubt that he tees it up.
Oh, really? Really?
Well, I mean, you have 7 women now come forward to say that he made them uncomfortable. Yeah, His best day may be the day he announces.
But wait a second.
Secondly, he finessed a Ukraine deal for his son, who had a cash cow there. There's a lot of things going on with Joe Biden we don't know right now.
Whoa. Back this up here. Let's when we get back to the Ukraine deal here for a moment, because all of a sudden I'm hearing Russia all over again. But before we even go into that, let's talk about Vice President Joe Biden, formerly Senator Joe Biden. Mark, I know that many people, and this has been the topic of discussion in the media now for weeks, that the former vice president had, shall we say, rather continuous embarrassing moments. I don't know whether to describe this. Some are using the word creepy, but I'll be kind, say embarrassing moments. This is not new news. Even though these ladies have come forward, it's all been filmed, it's all been documented. There's nothing.
But this has been being now pushed by, I think, the Sanders camp and others that have already jumped into the presidential race on the Democratic side.
Okay, so you don't think this is not a Republican
narrative?
Okay,
and it is different now because we're in the era of Me Too, Me Too movement.
Well, there's that, and there's also now we have the ability to, the term is curate all the videos and pictures that have been taken all these many, many years. And, of course, now with the ubiquitous nature of cell phone technology and I love using the word ubiquitous. Pardon me. Ubiquitous nature.
Let me look that up.
Please. Ubiquitous nature of the cell phone technology. These are things that are easily documented. Okay. Let's go to, for the moment, Vice President Joe Biden's son and the Ukraine deal. What Ukraine deal do you speak?
Well, he went over to Ukraine, met with them. They got a lot of money from defense. I think it was defense. I can look it up for you. I think for their defense, and then they hired his son. I mean, so kind of a quid pro quo, don't you think? Look, there's things coming out on him. I really do think about this. He's at 28% in the polls.
Right.
He's got 100% name ID.
Right.
And that's the best he can do. And by the way, I haven't seen Barack Obama endorse his candidacy.
That was the other question. Where is the former president when it comes to actually just supporting the vice president in this time of challenge and need? All right. Looking at this experience, and of course, I understand that others are entering the race. Did I hear that Paul Ryan was entering the race today?
I didn't hear that. Have you really heard that?
I heard, and I'm going to look this up. I heard that, and maybe I'll check this out. I am wondering if I should not even have mentioned that on the air.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised because he's the establishment favorite, but I mean, this guy could barely win his own district. Here it says Paul Ryan is vice chair. No, I don't.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had a news item earlier today, and I should not have introduced that topic until I had the opportunity to check on this. But back to the issue with all the candidates now entering the races. My question to you is this an effort in the case of former Vice President Joe Biden to, if you will, thin the ranks? Is this part of this program? Is this? What
I think about Biden is this. There's probably going to be 24 Democratic folks in a race for president. You've got this guy, and Ryan, you were right in this. Ryan from Ohio, the congressman, is going to.
Okay, Ryan, I apologize.
And he's a blue dog Democrat.
That's right. I apologize.
And I should have caught that. But the 9 yards of it is that if you look who is doing real well right now, it's Bernie Sanders. He raised $18 million in the first quarter. Secondly, I think the question Biden has to ask himself, how far is he willing to go left? A lot of people saw him as a liberal moderate, but the party's moved on. They're now the party of Ocasio-Cortez.
Okay.
They're not the party of Bill Clinton. Or, frankly, even Barack Obama.
Let's talk about that in just a moment. We're going to come back after this break. We've got to talk about issues in North Carolina as well. Thank you very much for correcting me on that, Mark.
I should have caught it.
Marc Rotterman.
Yeah, you're right.
We're talking about Representative Tim Ryan of Ohio, a Democrat, has entered the race as well. And, I'm wondering, as I go to this break, Mark, if maybe the presidential campaign is taking a cue from the North Carolina 3rd Congressional campaign, where we have 27 candidates, 17 Republicans. I wonder if the Democrats are saying, well, what we'll do is flood the zone and maybe we'll get something out of it. I'll be interested in your observation on that in just a moment. Marc Rotterman of Front Row, host of Front Row, as seen on WUNC-TV's program every Friday evening, 8:30 on the digital channel, 9 o'clock on the, 8:30 in the main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel. Then Saturday, 4:30 p.m., Sunday, 9:30 a.m., all on the digital channel. And then noon on Sunday on the WNC-TV's main channel. That's Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row here on Viewpoints. Marc Rotterman with us, host of Front Row, as seen every Friday evening, 8:30 p.m., on WNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel, and then throughout the weekend as well, as I shared with you a few moments ago. It's always a pleasure to have Mark on. Somewhat of a cynic when it comes to politics. He understands some of the intrigues and nuances of politics. We were chatting a moment ago about the issue of former Vice President Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and I misspoke a few moments ago. It's Tim Ryan of Ohio. He's a Democrat, announced his entry into the presidential campaign for, seeking the nomination. Mark, moving on to other things here, and I'm going to get to the impacts of news related to North Carolina politics, but sticking with the national scene for a few more moments. The issue along the border, the flood of illegals, a headline I read just a few moments ago, El Paso overwhelmed, that was the word, overwhelmed by the immigrants. Is this story going to come back to be a major political issue that could, that the Republicans can glom onto as their statement of how they want to correct things.
Well, I really do think it will, because there's two issues that are headlining right now, and immigration is the number one issue in most polls, and health care is number two. I think the president's on solid ground, although he keeps moving the goalposts. First, he's going to close down the border. Right. Now he's giving the Mexican government a year to straighten out this mess and to send people back. I mean, really, it's pretty simple, Lockwood. If they would police their own borders and have a fence or a wall and stop these people from coming in, but frankly, they give them a bus ticket and send them forward.
Right, I know. And
this has been going on for a long time. A lot of us have been talking about it. Clearly, the Border Patrol, Immigration and Customs is overwhelmed.
It is.
We're being flooded with drugs, methamphetamines, cocaine, heroin, fentanyl.
Right.
And we don't. I read a report the other day that in addition to the illegals, and many of them, well, they are illegals, but they catch these people. They don't have the room to keep them now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That there's 25,000 people that have crossed our borders that we have no idea who they are. They could be terrorists. They could be anybody.
And frankly, sadly, we're not seeing Congress overly concerned, Republican or Democrat. I just don't sense the sense of urgency on this issue. Before we continue this conversation, I've got a caller standing by. I want to get him on very quickly. John in Jacksonville joining us. John, good afternoon. Our guest, Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row. Yes, sir.
Yes, gentlemen. Real quickly, I just want to say the candidates that are running on the Republican ticket to replace Walter Jones' seat. Where is a good place to get their positions as a whole and at one location?
John, I'm not sure that I can give you an answer on that, but I'll tell you what. I'm going to put you on hold. Taylor's going to get your email address, and let me see if I can give you an answer to that. And I'll tell you what, in the process, let me see if I can't produce that answer for the public as well. But I thank you for your call.
Also, I got one other comment. And maybe your guest, Mark, has had this conversation on his show, but let me point out something about health care.
Okay.
Health care, a couple of years ago when we started with Obamacare, my family's policy rates kept going up 25% each year.
Right.
And we literally could not afford it. And we went to a health sharing ministry program, and there's a few of them out there. And, our philosophy was, hey, look, we're going to have some skin in the game, take good care of ourselves, and if something catastrophic happens, we've got a backup plan.
Right.
Why couldn't we get a plan where if people like people that, take responsibility for the most part, be afforded an option to have a health savings account as well as a tax incentive for being part of the solution? I'll hang up and listen to your guest.
All right, that's a good question. Let's go to that one with our guest this afternoon, Marc Rotterman. Mark, healthcare is in fact a topic of discussion right now, and quite frankly, another example of the president, if you will, making sudden reactions or sudden decisions. And of course, he wanted to and had the opportunity because of a judicial decision, basically to shut down the Affordable Care Act. He's now kind of kicked that can down the road. But there's another example where we don't see Congress, and particularly the Republicans, being aggressive and or when
did the Republicans take over? 2010.
Exactly.
And of course, now they've lost Congress.
Right.
Okay. What is their health care plan? One of the big things in 2010 with the health care party, with the Tea Party, was to repeal and replace Obamacare.
Right.
I've never once seen a real plan come out of the Republican Party. And they talk a lot about it, but they don't get anything done. I think that's the problem with Washington in general.
I was going to say, Mark, the only urgency I see right now was the decision to pass a subpoena, a vote to subpoena the records from the special prosecutor's documents or records on the Russia investigation. That's the sum total.
Well, and the president's businesses, they want his tax returns.
Yeah, that's the sum total of any significant action on the part of Congress. It's getting frustrating. This goes to the topic, and we're going to get to this in a few moments, of making changes in Washington, D.C. looking at, and again, these issues, the topic of immigration, the lack of urgency there, the lack of urgency on health care, the lack of urgency on doing something with the national debt. My question to you is the president, again, running solo without the benefit of, quite frankly, of any congressional support, let alone any political support from, and I use air quotes, his own party?
Well, I think there's two things that one is I'd say the Freedom Caucus does support him, and Mark Meadows,
right,
who I think is an outstanding congressman,
okay,
and Jim Jordan. However, I think what you're seeing on the Senate side is lip service, except when it comes to the judicial nominations. Now, I think that what they've done with the going nuclear and ending the filibuster means now that the judicial nominations will go from 30 hours of debate to 2 hours of debate.
Right. Let's talk about that.
And they only need 51 votes to get there rather than 60, and that's major.
Now
that may be Trump's lasting legacy is the courts.
Okay, we are seeing now the courts, of course, but we are seeing an effort on the part of the president to actually build a wall, and I know that he's going to be going to the border here soon to look at the wall. And the other aspect of this, and of course I think this is important, he is making changes in the Affordable Care Act. The problem is, he doesn't have any backup, and I'm thinking the voters, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking the voters are going to get very frustrated with all the Republicans currently in Washington.
Let me say, if the Republicans play this right, and you have a clear contrast between a Kamala Harris and a Donald Trump, or a Bernie Sanders and a Donald Trump, I think this could be like 1972 McGovern all over again. And by the way,
wow,
not only am I saying that, Chris Matthews said that last night.
Really?
Chris Matthews. Yeah. I mean, so, of MSNBC.
Right.
I think they've moved too far left, and they don't have any solutions. Their only solutions is to resist. Or to investigate.
And investigate, yeah. And to tear down. Okay, I want to come back to now the situation in North Carolina, get your observations on the recent disclosures of investigations with the North Carolina Republican Party. What does this portend for the 3rd and 9th congressional districts and for North Carolina Republicans in general? And don't forget, Mark, we've got a Republican convention in Charlotte in a little more than a year from now. Well, a year and a half, roughly. Stay tuned for more here on Viewpoints with Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, as seen on UNC-TV's main channel, 8:30 tomorrow evening, 9 o'clock on the digital channel, other times during the weekend, which I will share with you shortly. Stay with us here on Viewpoints with Marc Rotterman. The Y Factor right after our conversation with Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, is seen on WNC-TV's tomorrow program, Front Row, tomorrow evening, 8:30 on the WNC's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel. And also to remind you, throughout the weekends, if you miss the primary programs, you can watch them 4:30 Saturday afternoon, 9:30 Sunday morning, all on the digital channel. Then noon on Sunday on the WNC's main channel. That's Front Row with the host of, the host, our guest this afternoon, Marc Rotterman. We'll find out what's on tap here in a few moments and who the panel will be. But, Mark, I want to go to North Carolina for a few moments, and this story related to Mr. Lindbergh and his insurance company and various investments. And, of course, he was the target of – I shouldn't say target. He was the subject of a Wall Street Journal article some 2 years ago. What impact is this going to have on the primary races in both 3rd and 9th congressional districts? Now, 9th, of course, is still dealing with the embarrassing ballot harvesting that took place in 2 counties for sure. Well, 1 county for sure, 2 counties.
Well, let me just say about the 9th. I'd say the Democrat former Marine is in the driver's seat at this point.
Okay.
Now you have 2 incidences of the ballot harvesting and possible corruption among the higher ranks of the Republican Party. I mean, frankly, it was influence. It could be influence peddling, and you have a lot of people who took a tremendous amount of money in the Republican Party from this gentleman. Now, I want to say up front that this is alleged, so everybody's presumed innocent.
Right.
However, from what we know, just reading in the press, it does not look good, and it's easily a major distraction. Of course, in the third, you got to cast the thousands, but I would say Phil Law, Greg Murphy, Michelle Mix have a really good shot. Somebody's going to get they got to get to 10% to get into to a runoff, and we'll see what happens there. It's very compacted, as you know. What is it? April 30th is the first date.
And by the way, we've only seen 17 absentee ballots cast in North Carolina's 3rd congressional district as of yesterday. I'm looking at this thinking, I would be surprised if we get greater than 5% turnout. I'd be shocked, frankly. And so this is going to be a tough election for all the candidates.
Well, the other one I'd say is a wild card is Francis DeLuca.
Okay.
And I'd say that because he was the president of Civitas. He's got an inbuilt grassroots organization, as does Michelle Nix. So we'll see what transpires. And I think Greg Murphy, State Representative Murphy, he comes from a good area in Greenville, so that works for him. And by the way, let's not forget Phil Law, who frankly got 27% of the vote last time against an icon.
Right.
Okay, so. But what we are seeing right now statewide is a party that's the Republican Party. I think is frankly from the organizational level or from the being run from Raleigh's in chaos.
And that I wonder is going to open the door for competitive races across the state coming to the 2020 election. I mean, this is going to be a challenge. Well,
you think of all the congressmen that took money from this gentleman, okay?
But he also gave to Democrats, did he not?
They gave money to the Democrats, but there's been no charge of illegality. There's been no charge of the congressman either. But let's just say, for hypothesis' sake, that he's convicted. Then everybody who took money, their picture's going to be right up there beside him in an ad. Believe me, the Democrats are. That's what I do, and we did that with Charles Keating. People took money from Charles Keating. That's way back a while ago.
Yes, that was.
And the SNL scandal. Okay, so what I'm saying is, it's guilt by association, and it's fair game, and you're going to see people use it. I feel sorry for Robin Hayes. I hope these stories aren't true. I will say that the disturbing thing to me, the charges are disturbing, but usually you're not charged with lying to the FBI unless they feel like, and they have 3 charges unless they feel like they're pretty much solid ground.
All right, Mark, the other aspect of this, and of course, we are looking now at the 2020 campaign, are we not? Granted, we've got some interruptions here with both the 3rd and the 9th, but things are beginning to heat up for 2020, are they not? And by the way,
I think they are. And I'll tell you, I'm a conservative, but on the talk show, on the front row, I try to call balls and strikes.
Right.
But let's be real clear. You looked at the last Civitas poll. Roy Cooper's at 58%, Governor Roy Cooper. He's in pretty solid ground. He seems to me to be in the driver's seat. You contrast that with Senator Tom Tillis, who's got a 26% approval rating.
Good point. Okay, the other quick question for you, then we're going to go to the program tomorrow evening. Host of Front Row with us, Marc Rotterman. The 2020 convention, Republican convention, what impact could all of this have on that? And by the way, the state Republican Party is got a lead role in this.
Well, I will tell you this right now. I think that will change.
Okay.
I think that
all the parties will.
But that the Republican National Committee will run it, as well as the Trump folks.
Okay.
And it will be and they'll have people that have done probably 10 conventions in there running it. And honestly, that would have happened anyway. You still have the Republican Party involved, but not on the managerial level.
Okay.
This is going to be a scripted info commercial for Donald Trump.
All right, and as we wrap it up with you tomorrow evening, host of Front Row, Marc Rotterman, with us this evening. First, what will the topics be?
Well, we're going to be talking about what's happening with the North Carolina GOP and the indictment of Chairman Hayes. We're going to talk about the Duke Energy being ordered to remove coal ash.
Right.
Of course, Joe Biden, who's under fire. And we will be talking about the situation at the border. And we have a really good group of panelists. We have Mitch Kokai of the John Locke Foundation, Democratic strategist Morgan Jackson, he's advisor to the governor, political analyst Joe Stewart, and Donna King with WPTF Radio News.
All right, that's tomorrow evening. Our guest, your host, we're front row, heard every Friday evening, 8:30 on WNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel. Mark, looking at the events of the past week, what do you expect next week? Of course, continued issues on the Mueller report, but anything significant at this point?
Let me just say this to you. I think the American people have already made up their mind that the Mueller report and what Barr put out there is pretty much sacrosanct. They're tired of investigations. I think it's pretty much over. And I think the president will ignore a lot of these things. I think Barr's on solid legal ground. The attorney general, and I'll tell you why, because there's a law that you cannot give out grand jury testimony.
Right. No, I think that's important. Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, with us this evening. Again, tomorrow evening, 8:30 on WNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel, and throughout the weekend as well. Stay tuned for more here on the Talk Station. And Mark, as always, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, sir.